Welcome to Bullies, Wimps, and Poverty Pimps, a bi-weekly podcast with me, Dr. Kish Cumi Price. Hello, I am Dr. Kish Cumi Price, and welcome to a special episode of Bullies, Wimps, and Poverty Pimps. And we actually had planned to interview my mom tonight, really because her story is a very special one to share as the mother of my brother and, of course, me, but to be able to share her experience as a mom that had to endure witnessing the treatment that my brother did or did not receive from various systems throughout his lifetime. And so this is a follow up to the series that we've been uh, releasing as we have the strength to do so. And this one's special because we finally decided as a family that the best way to honor his memory and to ensure that other individuals or families don't experience the same kind of pain that we did, that we can advocate and really push for policy change and supporting people as they struggle in life. And a lot of them end up in these situations that they have no control over, and many of them are not even aware of what happened during their time that they were struggling with mental illness. And so we officially launched Clay in His Hands Foundation today, which is May 7th when I'm recording this. And I want to just share a little bit about the specifics of what happened with my brother's death and how it inspired our action to move forward with the foundation. So many of you have heard part of the story. I think more continues to be revealed. The Tennessean actually released an article that was very difficult for us to even read through. I think I shared that my sister-in-law has started a lawsuit against Core Civic, which is the private prison owner of the prison that my brother was murdered at. And at some point, I'd love to have her on to share her story as well. But at this time, she's not able to do so as she's in an active lawsuit. But one of the things that really stood out to us was the negligence, the intentional desire to create chaos from those that are supposed to be in leadership. And to give a better sense of what I'm saying there, within that article, it was revealed after the prison, Hardeman County Correctional Facility, had to release the video footage of my brother's death and the murder and how it occurred to the lawyers. And it came out from that story within the Tennessean that, and we kind of heard, I think I shared with you guys different things we'd heard from people, but none of it was verified until now. But that a correction officer, this is somebody who's supposed to be protecting the livelihood of the people who are incarcerated at the prison. That correction officer, however, decided to let 5 guys out of their cells to kill my brother. And they did so with permission, right? Like it wasn't fear on their part that anything was going to happen to them, because here was a correction officer allowing them to do it. And as the article reads, he was stabbed 60 times, of what the autopsy report confirms as well. And it is, I think it's been difficult for us to not only not get information when we should have received the information. So it's like waves of trauma that we experience that over and over again that we shouldn't experience, right? There's the natural grieving process, but then there's the complex grief that happens in situations like this, where you are getting more information over time that is traumatic and damaging to your spirit. And so we are all in different spaces on different days at different times. And I thank God for the strength to be able to share this story right now with you all, so you understand why we're doing what we're doing. And I think my husband wouldn't mind me sharing this, but he did ask me recently, just kind of like, explain to me why, the why. Why are you doing this? Why do you feel the need to do this right now? And from a healthy place, because he too experienced the death of his brother unexpectedly, not in a correctional facility, but still all the same a murder, and expressed that the guilt that can be attached to it, right, as a sibling, wanting to have done more, like wishing that you could have done more to stop it or prevent it, or in any way engage, right, so that you have a different outcome that leads to your brother, or being able to live. And I know that, yes, some of that is true, right? I live with that. I have to live with that, knowing that despite the things that I did over my lifespan and his, that it did not end with the result that I wanted or our family wanted. However, we are believing that God is always in control and that his will prevails. And I'm going to share with you all, I don't know if I said this before, but when we found out that my brother passed, I remember thinking, and you may think this is crazy if you don't believe in the God that I serve, but I believe in resurrection power, and not just in the spiritual sense, but in the physical sense. And so I remember thinking and praying to God, like, God, I believe that you can bring him back. I don't care what happened. I don't care what they are saying or claiming. And at the time, we didn't know all of the specifics. But regardless, I was like, God, if you want him to live, you can bring him back. I know you can. And I'm trusting and believing that you will and that you can, if it's your will and that's what you want to do. Like, my faith is there for it. And I was almost immediately reminded of what would be on the other side of that, right? Like, if that happened and his life was spared, or he, was miraculously saved, from dying or brought back, to life, that he would still have to sit in that prison, and he would still have to serve out a sentence for a crime that he doesn't even remember committing. I just, and that gave me some weird sense of peace, that I thought, I was reminded that my brother would not want to be called down from heaven to come back to experience life on this earth, especially in the condition in which he was living at the time that he died. And so that is selfish of me to even expect or desire that, right? And so I quickly abandoned that thought, even though I know God could have done it if he wanted to, right? And there are other stories that I will be able to tell after all of this settles a little bit more, things that I don't want to share that may impact the lawsuit. But anyway, that my sister-in-law has filed. But I do believe that there is a way for us to continue to honor his memory and to be able to help others, because we don't want anybody else to experience this, feel this, have to witness this. It's not for the weary. And to share a little bit more about my brother, he had a lot of charisma, a lot of talent, very creative, very smart. very giving, big heart. And at the same time, he was struggling with mental illness. He suffered from substance abuse, he suffered from depression, major depressive disorder, and at one point was diagnosed with schizophrenia as well. And all of this, I think, is there are things that we just don't talk about the way that we need to talk about them. And I think it gets even more hush hush, if you will, when we start talking about justice involved people, right? It's okay if you have a mental illness and you're just trying to, maintain your treatment. But when you commit a crime and you're suffering from a mental illness, people aren't talking about that, right? Like we don't talk about it enough. And because we don't talk about it enough, the policies, the things that need to be in place to change the conditions that people are subjected to, especially in correctional facilities, and I'm saying in air quotes correctional facilities because they're everything but that. When we realize that there is no real voice, that there's no real intention to help people who need the most help, then I think that's a problem. And that's why we decided to create this foundation, is to do what we can do to give voice to it, to also advocate for the systems like the private prison systems that are not serving anyone well, especially those with mental illnesses, to no longer receive funding from the state and from federal government or anyone else. Like they do not need to be receiving funding to do what they're doing, which is not serving anyone well. They're not serving the people who are incarcerated well. They're not serving civilization well, because once people serve out their sentences and come back into society, they are no better for it because they have not had true rehabilitation. They have not had their needs met. And so you can't expect for anything to happen but what's been happening, which is this increased rate of recidivism over time. And it's even more prominent in private prisons. And so, listen, I can't say enough about the fact that core civic just needs to be shut down on every level. And I also want to say that there are a lot of people who have invested in these private prisons and are making money because of their investments and getting their campaigns, funded. We get that, but I'm appealing to not only them, but the collective people who know this is not right, so that you can then start to petition your leaders to say, we don't want this. We want you to address this issue. We want to reallocate funding to support people in different ways. And this is not the way. So until we do that, it continues to produce what is produced, which is death and destruction and chaos. And then you're left with people trying to pick up the pieces and figure out what happened. And I just want to share a little bit about what we're doing. So just bear with me for a minute here, because I think it's important to know that for us, our desire to create this space where we see the society focusing more on the care of an individual than incarceration. And especially when people are struggling with mental illness. And I want to say this because I do think it's confusing to some, right? When you talk about somebody who's struggling with addiction, drug addiction, typically people don't put that under the same umbrella as mental illness. However, first of all, it is definitely under the same umbrella. In fact, there's a diagnosis for, depending on substance abuse or substance dependence, but all the same, a lot of people are struggling with mental illnesses, undiagnosed mental illnesses, and some that are diagnosed, and they are self medicating. So that is how they end up in the space of addiction. And so when that happens, you have a higher chance of doing things that you would not normally do in your regular state of mind, right? You may not even recall anything that happened. And for us, it's important to look at all of the opportunities and ways to produce better outcomes for people, right? To say, not to say we're going to dismiss or not acknowledge the fact that you did what you did, but we are going to help you by identifying what you're struggling with and providing a care plan, a treatment plan for each person, each individual, because that's what the money should be funding is rehabilitation, not recidivism, which is the result of any of these current systems, death or recidivism. And so, there are certain, and I'm not saying it's not possible. Obviously, there are people who have fought through and not been the victim of it. But when I tell you the system is designed to do this, it's designed to do it. It's designed to keep people in those beds, in those cells, because that's how they get paid. Okay. And I do know, and I think a lot of you know, that there's other underlying issues here in terms of targeting certain people, certain communities. It can't be spoken enough about what happens in communities of colors, specifically Black communities, and the lack of treatment, the lack of compassion. And so when we sat down to create Clay in His Hands Foundation, we talked about the importance of merging justice with compassion. So it's not saying, oh, we go pretend that nothing happened. It happened. But how do we deal with this? Serve justice in a way that is compassionate. What are we doing to make sure that happens? How do our policies align with that kind of vision where you actually care about humane treatment? And so our goal is to not only focus on awareness, but also to advocate for policy changes and then to support people who are currently in this pipeline, whether they are currently justice involved, whether they are youth that have been pushed out of schools that are flagged and labeled and identified as victims of the school to prison pipeline, literally a bed waiting for them because they know that this is how they determine the trajectory for how many prisons they need, right? And so I believe that the more that we can focus on changing what is, which is the intervention piece of it, and preventing this from happening to those that have been tagged and labeled to feed the system, then we can change the future. We can. And we plan on doing that, one life at a time. We hope that we can have a larger impact as we address these things together. And we are intentional about it because no one should have their life prematurely snuffed out because a system was designed to allow it. Right? That's what we're talking about. That's pretty much what it's set up for right now. Like they are housing people who have life sentences with people who don't. So what happens when the lifers, which is what they call them, end up committing more crimes while they are locked up? They don't care. They got life anyway. So what is no loss to them. It's not like they care, oh, you go give me life on life. And that is another element that just, it's like, who designed this plan and who thinks it's okay to continue to do this? Because it's not right. And I think one of the other pieces that I wanted to highlight today, and I'm trying to keep my energy up because it is difficult to talk about these things. And I want you all to know that as much as we show up or don't show up, that there's grace there, and there's grace for you if you're struggling with some of the same issues and listening to me now, that you allow grace for yourself, you allow grace for people who are going through the things that we're going through, and that you show up when and where you can. So what we're asking people to do today is to donate $7 or more to Clay in His Hands Foundation. You can do that very easily through Givelify. That's the platform that we're using. You can go to givelify.com, or you can download the app and you just put in your information. They verify who you are by your email or Facebook, and then you just go ahead and process a donation. And we're asking for $7. I know it's like, why $7? But seven was a very important number to my brother, Clay. And we also know that, it is spiritual significance for completion. And we believe that this foundation is helping in some way to complete his vision, which he had to support other people in recovery, to help people's lives improve, and to lead people in a way to God. And so our goal is to do some of that through this foundation, what we're able to do as a nonprofit organization. And you can help us. And that's how we love for you to help us, if you're able, is to contribute $7 or more now, today. And if you're not able to do it now, whenever you feel led to do so, we'd love for you to be a part of this journey, and we thank you in advance. And there's also a really neat feature on this platform where you can just click set recurring. And so that would be like, you can set for every month, $7 comes out. I was talking to my mom about how we have all these subscriptions and things that we don't even use, and it comes out every month, and then you're like, wait a minute. So I'm looking to be inspired by that kind of investment. I'm planning on redirecting some of those subscriptions to fund and invest in this mission, and asking you all to do the same if you feel led. And it's the work that we want to do to honor his legacy and his contributions to this world. And he was a big part of our world. So we are standing strong on that. And we will continue to share some updates as I continue to feel led to do this podcast. And if you want to follow the journey, we will be at clayinhishands.org is the website. And feel free to join the community that we're building through Facebook, which is Clay in His Hands Foundation, the page that you can like and follow, just to continue to become more aware and to advocate so that we can actually see change for others. Now, I want to leave you with this thought. As you know, sometimes I feel very led to share something that has stood out to me. And this is a proverb from chapter 21, verse 13. But it says, those who shut their ears to the cries of the poor will be ignored in their own time of need. Okay. I think that is highly significant. And there are other scriptural references about our responsibility to respond to the needs of those who have the least, right? To the least of these. And when you're doing that, you're helping God, right? Like he sees it as you helping him when you help others. And so that is our appeal. We're asking for you to help, to not shut your ears from the cries of those who need the most support, because a lot of them are not able to advocate for themselves. And if they do, then they are going to be pretty much living in fear of retribution, right? And so I leave you with that charge, and I ask you to help however you can, whether it's sharing our message with others or donating as you can. If you're a praying somebody who prays to the Almighty God, then please pray for us as well. And thank you for listening. And I know these episodes come when they come, but I thank you for being patient and riding with us. All right. So as we close out, be bold, be courageous, be unpimped.